All right. Patrick, are you here?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I would say let's get started. Welcome everyone to the first community session of 2024. We're really happy you're all here. If you missed last month's community session, you can check it out on our YouTube channel. And without further ado, let's get into this community session. First off, we will start with some release highlights and a general update from the maintainers, from Patrick.
All right. So yeah, it was a Christmas release, we could call it. So not a whole lot of things in this one. We had a couple of improvements to the new front-end system that we shipped, and more migration to the new backend system as well, and some tooling around that. Have the experimental backend dynamic feature service from David Festel from Red Hat as well. Who's looking at kind of early versions of dynamic feature loading for Backstage, which is a very nice experimentation. I think, yes, and we have the scaffolder actions as well for GitLab issues and the repo push. Yep, so I want to just talk a little bit about our ongoing work as we kind of try to shape the roadmap as well. We hope to communicate a more clear roadmap later on, but we're still kind of figuring out the beginning of the year. But right now we've just picked up work on adding protection by default to Backstage. So this means basically being able to deploy Backstage towards the internet, having built-in protection, rate limiting, those kind of things in place, and then potential. And I realize this is not in the slide, but I thought of it now. We're also doing another CNCF security audit soon, so it's going to be timed nicely for that, so we can have that in before the security audit happens. Yep, other than that, we're also looking at more continued iteration on the front-end system. And then in the community, we have some work going on. In particular, want to call out a few BEPs, so those are Backstage Enhancement Proposals, process that we just got going. So there's a BEP for notifications, where there's a planned design for how we are going to add notifications to Backstage, a notification system. So it's a design in progress kind of document that we're iterating on, and the exact same thing for dynamic plugins. In particular, the one right now that we have is for the front end. Yep, those were the main things to call out.
Thank you very much. Like with this ongoing work, also sharing this time around some new plugins and move plugins, maybe interesting for some of you. Yeah, especially shout out to the Backchat Gen AI plugin. If you haven't seen it yet, there is a Backstage Con talk on it. You can check it out on YouTube, on the CNCF channel, where Ben really dives into the idea of it. And now it's also in the plugin directory, so you can go on backstage.io/plugins and try out your Backchat Gen AI with your Backstage instance and see how it works with like different LLMs. At the same time, we don't only have new plugins, but some of our existing plugins moved to new owners. And one of them is the announcements plugin. It's moved to Procore. And what we're really happy about, also the PagerDuty plugin, which we owned recently, we owned at Spotify, now moved officially to the PagerDuty organization and is in good hands. Thiago is doing great work shipping there. For you, that means updating the dependencies. So updating it from @Backstage to the @Procore or @PagerDuty dependencies, so you get the latest updates. And with that, we are kind of at the end of the community sessions in just a few minutes. And just to look ahead of the next month and see what's coming up. Backstage Con is on the horizon. So mid of March, get your tickets now. They're still a bit cheaper until 1st of February. The schedule is live, check it out. Also want to shout out the next 6. So special interest groups around the adoption as well as the catalog. The next one for adoption is on the 1st of February. The next catalog SIG is on the 6th of February. Feel free to subscribe to our calendar or check out our Discord events. There you will find always the latest links to those events. The next community session is going to be on the 3rd Wednesday of February. And we will stick with this 3rd February of the month schedule for now because we want to align it with our releases. This means that we always have the community session just the day after our mainline release. And with all this, also a call for community or a call for actions for you guys. We're super happy that you join. We're super happy that you maybe listen in on YouTube. And we are looking for more topics or your adoption journey. Maybe you want to present your plugin in the future. The community session should really be the place for you guys and to showcase what's going on in the community. So if you have ideas how you want to shape the community session, please reach out. And yeah, we are happy to help. With this, let's get into Q&A. So if you have any questions around Backstage, around the latest release, feel free to ask them in the chat. Let's wait maybe one more minute. And if there are no other questions, you can always reach out in Discord. You can, if you joined late now and are wondering what's going on, where's my community session? We're a bit light on topics. Please, we are hoping to upload it soon on YouTube as well, so you can check it out again. There's one question. What is the progress with Quick Start? I'm not sure. Someone on that team, Patrick?
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't see anyone. Alex, do you happen to have context on that? Otherwise, we might have to defer that question.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. We are currently working on it. I don't have any dates specifically to share on that, but it is certainly in progress. And as soon as we have an update for everyone, we will provide that. But yeah, just know it's work in progress.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, this is Nitin. I just noticed on the documentation there's a new backend and new front-end system. I mean, I haven't read through it. Just wanted to know if you can give us an overview of like what is the intent and how it will move forward.
I think perhaps the best resources still for those two things would be for more kind of in-depth descriptions of how they work and the problems they're trying to solve are Backstage Con and KubeCon talks that I can link. They are both systems that are at this point kind of trying to move Backstage from being a library where you wire together your app with a lot of code to instead have Backstage be more of a framework or even platform that you install plugins into and have a lot less manual work in how you wire everything together. That's kind of the overarching goals of those two new systems. The backend system is a lot further along than the front-end one. You can migrate to the backend system today. There are migration guides. There are some kind of caveats. Not all plugins are migrated, but there are some legacy helpers to install legacy plugins as well in your backend. We're hoping to get the backend system out in GA, within reasonable time in this year. We'll see exactly how long time that takes, but that's closer in time. The front-end system still very experimental. I think that's in the documentation. There's a big disclaimer at the top there that that's something we're still very much working on. We did an alpha release of that end of last year, which basically marked it as being a complete system. You can now build an entire app in the new front-end system, but you will not have any plugins more or less at all or anything like that. So still iterating and looking for feedback on that system.
Thank you. And just one more question. Any progress on internationalization? Like, is it planned for this year, or is still kind of not a priority? Like localization.
We have support for it. It's mostly about supporting the plugins. We have a couple of PRs in flight that adds it. We're still kind of trying to get a bit of a feel for how it's best to structure the messages. But we have actually had those discussions and have some initial guidelines in place for how to kind of structure the each individual message, the keys and so on. So I think we'll probably do a broader call for contributions there actually to that system and more internationalization of plugins to add support for that. So yeah, stay tuned for updates.
Nice. The next question from the chat is just checking if we have any processes for automated testing of the Backstage templates.
Yes,
Patrick?
there is
Yeah.
a document in Contrib that has, I believe it's in Contrib. Here we go. Thank you for that link on internationalization, Andre. Trying to look up the talk links as well still for the systems.
The next question is there any plan to have fully fledged Backstage backend plugins with Node, Common, and how module and so on modules? Right now, you have the docs on the side, but a code example would be handy. I would guess this goes into the direction of how to split plugins depending on different purposes. My suggestion here would be to refer to other plugins already following this pattern. I don't think we have like the one example plugin for each of those kinds, right? We don't have.
Yeah, I want to kind of ask a clarifying question there. Is this talking about documentation for these things? Or what? I'm not sure I understand that question actually, exactly what's being asked. Or maybe Philip answered it with what he said.
All right.
I think something that we're looking for, we're gonna need a bit of a breather to get that point and have the systems be quite stable, but we certainly want to create more like golden paths that we use internally at Spotify a lot. We've talked about externally for plugin development specifically. So how to build a plugin with the front end and the back end. That would be more of a complete guide that builds upon the previous steps to build a complete plugin and the different packages and so on that might be involved in that. So that it's certainly on our radar.
All right. Then there's a comment on different platforms. Nice that everybody contributed and shared what they're using, GCP, AWS. But I don't see any more questions, so let's give it 30 more seconds. And if there are no more questions, okay, there's still the one last question. Is there a way currently in Backstage templates to fail a step based on a previous one? Patrick, do you want to answer this or?
So let's see. So based on a previous one, sorry. Is that a custom action in that case or not? So actions can output data, and actions can cause the workflow to fail by throwing an error. So the question there is whether that's enough building blocks. It might be the case that you need to create a custom action for that to work. Could use some elaboration on the exact use case, but you can certainly have one action output a piece of data and have a second custom action that validates that data and cancels the workflow if it doesn't match.
Yeah, for this probably check out the scaffolder documentation on this. So yeah, which goes a bit more into detail how to fail a step or how to deal with non-completed or wrong or checking like the input of a step. There should be
custom action docs right there.
Okay, Alan, you wanna? I see you raise your hand. Do you want to say something?
Sorry, yeah, I thought I might just elaborate better on the question. What I meant is, I think currently, it does. I think you can fail a step, but I think that will interrupt the whole workflow. But I suppose what I meant was to skip the next step, let's say only, and then continue the workflow for the other steps based on, let's say, the previous one. I hope that makes sense. That's kind of what I meant with my question.
There is an if parameter for the step that might be useful in that case, so that the step is skipped. So this is going to be in the actions spec docs for the steps. So if that check doesn't pass, then that individual step will be skipped and the workflow will continue. Is that what you need?
But that would still interrupt the entire process, correct?
No, it just skips that individual step and then continues.
Okay, I'll have a look at that. Thank you very much.
Should at least. I hope I'm not wrong about that.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying the question. That was helpful. I'll continue with one from the chat. So there's for tech docs. It seemed that it is aimed toward hosting docs in the cloud, but if you run all on-premise, what options outside OpenStack and local do you have? Yeah, Patrick, do you want to answer? Or I can maybe start with answering this. So it depends like what you want to do, but usually tech docs, the idea of tech docs is that they live in your code, so or next to your code, so in your repository. So you wouldn't really need to host the documentation itself somewhere else. But yeah, you would need to run the backend somewhere else. There is not really required to run it on the cloud, but you can run it on premise.
It's for the render docs, so you want to store the render docs somewhere. There is an OpenStack Swift publisher, so in general there's it's the publisher. I can't remember if it's the reader as well. Actually, Emma's on the call. You might know this, but the publisher is certainly the thing that puts the documentation somewhere. there are publishers for OpenStack, Swift, Google Storage, Azure Blob Storage, and S3. I think there are a fair number of S3 compatible services that you can host on premise or host by yourself, and you would probably be able to use that publisher with potentially. The most extreme answer to this question is that you would be able to build your own publisher. As far as I know, that's something that you can provide, but that's a more, you bring your entire own implementation of how the documentation gets published and read. But yeah, I might go for the OpenStack Swift as an on-prem solution. Yeah, indeed, S3 compatible. Thank you in the chat.
Nice. Thanks, Patrick. Any more questions?
Hi, Philip. I have one question, same like which Alan has raised. So the question is regarding the Backstage software template, right? Like, let's say in the template, we have around 10 steps, 10 steps. In that, if one of the step fails, the workflow stops abruptly, right? Like, do we have an option to still proceed with the workflow even if any of the step fails?
We are working, it depends a little bit on what you mean by the exact question. In the scaffolder project area where it's actually Bogdan, one of the maintainers, is working on retriggerable workflows. So being able to retry currently just from the beginning, but also potentially from later steps further down the line. So that would be trying the exact same thing again and hoping it succeeds this time. But if what you want to do is try again but skip the step, that's I would say an even more advanced version of that requires some user interaction. So that would be even further down the line from the just re-triggering the workflow. But there is work towards that overall thing going on.
Sure, Patrick. So, is it like, do we have an option like, let's say, if step 5, we can add a condition on step 6, and the condition should be like, if the step 6 should be executed only if step 5 fails. Like, instead of restarting the entire workflow, right? Can we have an option like, in the workflow, step 6 should execute only if step 5 fails, or any of the steps above can fail? Something, do we have an option like that?
Not possible right now. It's getting pretty close to like the way GitHub Actions work there. I would encourage you to make a feature suggestion issue, a file feature suggestion issue on GitHub with that exact thing. Might be a thing that works with the existing if parameter. It of course needs modification, but could potentially be something to implement.
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. And with this, I would call this a community session. Thank you all for attending, and thanks for your question. Yeah, and if you have any more questions, join us on Discord, ask your questions there. Make sure if you have any topics or ideas for next community session to check out Backstage/community in our GitHub and add to the issue. And yeah, thank you all. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.